My goodness, that was beautiful. Oh. Thank you. Pema Chodron tells us that we can cultivate the four limitless qualities of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity by learning to relax where you are. This is where it begins, she says. But where are we? What is this, where it begins exactly? I must admit to feeling a tad unsettled these days, not sure where we are. Actually, that would describe my demeanor over the past 3 years or more. Often enough, the world around me seems in some ways disordered. Understanding of right and what is right and just have been turned on their head. Behaviors I once thought of as not normal or aberrant are almost customary now. Rage and brutality and selfishness are played out for all to see. It's disconcerting, to say the least. Disorienting, disturbing, disheartening. There are probably a few more words out there to describe it, and I don't think I'm alone in feeling this. A few years ago, Jeff Mano wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times called "No Such Thing as Solid Ground." In it, he reflected on his experiences in the earthquake that struck the Los Angeles area in early July 2019. A sense of dizziness, then nausea, rolled over me, he wrote, as the back wall of our dining room appeared to lean away and our tabletop somehow pushing closer toward me. They then reversed course over a span of several seconds, as if the space around us had begun to bulge and pulsate. Only when I noticed the lights mounted above our table swaying back and forth did I realize what was happening. Personally, I've never lived through anything like that and can only imagine the sensation. Mano continues his observations. The experience of an earthquake can be destabilizing, not just physically, but also philosophically. The idea that ground is solid, dependable, that we can build on it, that we can trust it to support us, undergirds nearly all human terrestrial activity, not the least of which is designing and constructing architecture. That morning, however, it was as if our home had been lifted up by an invisible sea. In an instant, what had been a house had become a raft bobbing at anchor. Inside, we rocked and rolled as if hit by a passing wake. No such thing as solid ground. We expect our world to be sound and durable, our environments dependable. But it is not always so. We look for stability, for solidity, and guarantees of security. But that is not the nature of life, whether it be our physical existence or our emotional world. So how do we live with the instability that is inherent, it seems, in our existence? Our reading this morning offered one idea, those sublime states of mind in Buddhist teachings. Perhaps the four limitless qualities can offer us a way through this. You don't have to become a devout Buddhist to learn from these teachings and to adopt these attitudes. And although all four qualities, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, are deeply important, equanimity may be the most helpful to help us navigate those moments when there is no such thing as solid ground. Definitions of equanimity include mental calmness, composure, evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations. coolness, detachment, tranquility. But this equanimity is more than just remaining calm and striving to remain calm in difficult situations and challenging moments. This is about an attitude, an approach to life that helps us keep our balance and perspective and actually can root us in that uncertainty so that we can stay open to all of life. We are here right now. But beyond that obvious statement, if I am in a state of equanimity, I am aware that even in this one moment, so much is happening that I cannot see, that I might not expect. We live here on earth, and as important as we think we are, we exist on a planet that is but a small outpost in the universe or multiverse. Our planet travels around what we call our sun, which, it turns out, is just one of many suns in the Milky Way. We see ourselves as being in charge of things. But if we look at all this from far out in the universe, we're pretty small, insignificant beings. Should we even try to transcend this insignificance? When we can embrace the depth and the expanse and dispassionate beauty of this wide universe, where we are just one tiny, minuscule life form, we are then beginning the practice of equanimity, finding a non-grasping balance in a sea of change and transition and impermanence. This is where we have to relax. Relax into letting go. It sounds so counterintuitive to me. I mean, when we're just facing what is not sure, what is not guaranteed, what is not solid, we have to relax and let go. But we cannot hold on for dear life. Now, these qualities are called limitless because they are always there for us. And we can begin the practice over and over again. So it's okay to make mistakes. Equanimity is also a way to deal with what the Buddhists call the 8 worldly winds, which is not quite as esoteric as it sounds. These 8 worldly winds whip us about as we move through life, and they are all too familiar. Praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. We are warned not to get caught up in these 8 desires. Now, you may think that the first 4 words in those pairs aren't so bad. Yes, praise, success, pleasure, fame, they will massage and feed our egos. We might even go so far as to label them as good, positive things to aim for. But in these teachings, we're warned not to grasp at those feelings, because that focus leads to self-centeredness. It will close us off. And that set of corresponding winds, blame, failure, pain, disrepute, when they arise, as they often will, they destabilize us. We label them as bad, something to be avoided. But we deny or ignore them at our peril. Becoming attached or excessively elated with success, praise, fame, or pleasure can be a setup for suffering when the winds of life change direction. And we know those winds do change. They buffet us from every side sometimes and arise when we least expect them. Success can be wonderful. To achieve a goal or to be appreciated and complimented by others is definitely a positive vibe. I can't deny that. But if it leads to arrogance, this just compounds our fall and truly closes us off to others, and we have much more to lose in any future challenge. Becoming personally invested in praise can lead toward conceit. And on the flip side of that, when things go wrong and we can only see where we failed, we'll start to drag around a cloak of incompetence and feel inadequate, unable to take on new pursuits or face the next challenge. Clinging to our pain and dissatisfaction, we become discouraged. We cannot free ourselves of those worldly winds. They are all around us. But we can free ourselves individually and as a community to face those winds with equanimity. We can hold life tenderly, close, but lightly. We need to understand that our sense of inner well-being is truly independent of those 8 winds. So by this point, I realize I may be sounding like quite the expert, like a guru laying some wisdom on you. But in truth, these are practices and attitudes I have studied and struggled to adopt and remember and practice in my life over too many years, sometimes to count. From childhood to adulthood, through a marriage, then children, then seminary, then coming out, through over 40 years of working in Unitarian Universalist institutions, I have been whipped around by these worldly winds over and over. And over, I begin again, right where I am. It is now later in life that I can find I can do that relaxing into the moment more easily. But it is not always second nature to me. We need to practice catching ourselves when we feel those winds arising, when we feel a strong attraction or aversion to them. Noticing these intense emotions can be frightening or unsettling, and for me, it takes me to places where I may not want to go, encouraging me to feel things I would prefer not to feel. They can make me feel small and insignificant. Yet no matter how small a creature I am, no matter how invisible the vast universe may be to me at any given moment, still I am rooted, deeply connected to the earth and to all the invisible universes above, below, and beyond me, right here, right now. That feeling of smallness, of insignificance in the face of a vast, mysterious universe in no way diminishes our importance. But this sense of smallness can show up in other ways as well, most especially in times of stress and ambiguity. So some more wisdom from Pema Chodron. She says, when we feel squeezed, there is a tendency for the mind to become small. We can feel miserable like a victim, like a pathetic, hopeless case. Yet, believe it or not, in that moment of hassle or bewilderment or embarrassment, our minds could become bigger. Instead of taking what occurred as a statement of personal weakness or evidence of someone else's power, instead of feeling stupid or that someone else is unkind, we could just drop all the complaints. Drop all the complaints about ourselves and others. Just stop worrying about it. We could simply be there, feeling off guard, not knowing what to do, just hanging out there with the raw and tender energy of the moment. Well, that does not sound terribly inviting, just hanging out there with the raw and tender energy of the moment. Wouldn't we prefer to be invited into a warm, safe, comfy place? Yet the reality is that every day we are just hanging out there with the raw and tender energy of the moment. And often enough, we find ourselves in that small place, that off-centering situation, almost like experiencing some tiny seismic shift where ambiguity and unknowing make us uncomfortable. It throws us off balance. And we are anxious. maybe even angry, if not a little annoyed at life for throwing us this curve. But this raw and tender energy brings us to a place where we begin to learn the meaning behind all the concepts and ideas and words. It brings us face to face with that idea of equanimity. Children suggest that the next time there is no stable place to stand, when we realize there is no such place as solid ground, don't consider it an obstacle. Consider it rather a remarkable stroke of luck. That may be terribly hard to do in the moment when uncertainty or fear grips us, yet that unsettling sensation of unstable ground beneath our feet can remind us to practice equanimity. And it's more than just maintaining your balance. I mean, that helps, but it's more than that. It's being open to what is happening and not holding too tightly to any one thing or desire. Opening to possibility. The secret behind this equanimity is to approach everything that we do as if it were the only thing that mattered, while all the time knowing that it doesn't matter at all. So I'm going to read that again. We approach everything that we do as if it were the only thing that mattered, while all the time knowing that it doesn't matter at all. That is equanimity, being in the middle of it all, aware and not grasping, remaining centered, balanced, flexible, open to whatever is happening. This equanimity is an inner strength or stability, a calm sense of well-being and integrity, projecting confidence, vitality. It can keep us upright, balanced in the vastness of the galaxies. Not stiff and rigid, but like a ballast keeps a ship upright in strong winds. As this inner strength develops, equanimity follows. We are not aloof, removed from our fellow beings, uncaring, but just here in this moment. And I was writing this, an experience of mine jumped into my head. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to Star Island out on the Isle of Shoals in New Hampshire. It is a Unitarian Universalist conference center perched on a rock in the Atlantic Ocean. And in all of the conferences I've attended there over the years, so many of the lessons I've carried away have to do with just being on that island rather than the content of the conferences of the workshops. So one time, in a difficult period in my life, I was walking along the craggy outer rocks that surround the island. They are big, huge. I think maybe they're granite. It looks like an abandoned quarry almost. And the paths to walk across them are not straightforward. The crevices and gaps are sometimes not apparent either. So it isn't something to be undertaken without paying close attention. This one time I went out with my hands stuffed in my pockets and my head cast down. A friend stopped me. He reminded me that this is not the way to go. I needed to lift my head, keep my eyes on where I was placing my feet, and take my hands out of my pockets, open my arms. Balance, attention, flexibility, eyes and heart open, equanimity. In situations good and bad, easy or difficult, we need that kind of balance. And we always learn and grow through our experiences and feelings, whatever they may be. This helps us expand feelings of kinship to others. Even what we might call bad feelings, like anger or resentment, no matter how bad it feels, if we can face our own selves with equanimity, So not just the whole world, but even in ourselves, we stay open to others who are likely suffering in the same way. Even at what we might call our worst, we have the opportunity to be our very best. And that's not often easy. We all get hooked by hope and fear, and we are all in the same boat. So we need to be more comfortable being in that middle place of it all, of holding neither fear nor hope or pain or happiness too tightly. These practices of compassion and mindfulness center us, help us be here, present in this very moment, aware of all of that is before us and beneath us and above us, and open-heartedly seeing the same humanity in everyone we encounter. As Mano reminds us in that op-ed piece, we dwellers on dry land, however grounded and civilized, stake our lives amid unmoving landscapes, claiming firm property that can be taxed, tended, and mapped, at least until that property rears up against us in an earthquake, tossed by a rogue seismic wave that has surged in over the horizon, making us feel lost at sea. We live atop waves, not rocks. Yet here we are, and as the words of our closing hymn will remind us, the wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.